I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I thought I might be, for that's clear anybody to see.
You've all heard of the pH scale when talking about how acidic something is. Did you know that pH stands for power of hydrogen? Well, if you didn't, now you do. Welcome to the 19th episode of Brains Matter. I'm the Ordinary Guy, and today is the 27th of February 2007. On today's show, you hear about the development of babies, a brain teaser, Cinderella, Pin of the Week, and some listener feedback. I've had some great responses about the interview last week with Dr. Joy Baker from Melbourne Uni, which was about her Star Trek thesis. If you have further questions or comments about that episode, or would like to ask Dr. Baker something, send me an email and I'll get those answered for you. I hope to bring you more interviews in the future on various topics as well. By now, you would have heard the news in the last week or so about Amelia Taylor, a baby born in Florida in the US, who has the distinction of being the most premature baby on record to have survived birth. She was born about 4 months ago and was only around 280 grams when she was born. That's less than a can of your favourite soft drink. She was born at 21 weeks gestation, which is just over halfway given that normal gestation is between 38 to 40 weeks. That's pretty amazing considering that Amelia wouldn't have reached the third trimester of the pregnancy. The previous record for a surviving premature baby was 23 weeks, which is still remarkably early. But thanks to modern science and medicine and the intensive care unit at the hospital she was born at, she was able to survive. So what happens week to week during the development of an embryo? In the first week after fertilization, it's pretty much cell division, so you get a bunch of cells together. By the 4th week, it's starting to look like an embryo, but it's actually pretty hard to distinguish visually from other mammal embryos. The 6th week is when eyes and ears start to develop. Week 9 is generally when arms and legs start to develop, and if you look at an ultrasound, it's really starting to look like a baby by this time. Pretty soon after this, the major organs form and the nervous system starts to send messages to the brain. So it could be argued that by this point, the fetus does actually feel pain. The bones start to form their structure at around the 14th week, which is at the start of the 2nd trimester. For those who haven't talked to anyone who's been pregnant before, a trimester pretty much refers to each of the three-month periods. Given that a pregnancy is normally 9 months, there are 3 trimesters. Scientists have observed the fetus sleeping around the 19th week and can distinguish that from what appears to be awake time. Eyebrows start to grow around the 22nd week, and keep in mind, everything that forms after this is what would have normally formed after the time that Amelia Taylor was born, given that she was born at 21 weeks. I mentioned eyebrows. You're probably wondering about nails too now, right? Well, those start to grow at around the 24th week. And now we're into the final trimester. At the 28th week, the eyelids split so the baby can actually start to see properly. And the reports around Amelia didn't state whether she was able to see at birth or not. So that would be interesting to find out. And by week 29, hearing becomes a lot more mature. From this point onwards, the baby continues to grow, gaining a lot of weight and getting ready for birth, and things such as hair continue to grow. Although this varies from baby to baby, some are as bald as a cue ball, and some have a thick head of hair at birth, but this is apparently more to do with genetics rather than what tends to be seen as the norm for different babies. The key question to answer with a baby born as prematurely as Amelia is that even though she's putting on weight and survived the birth and the immediate period afterwards, doctors are still unsure whether she'll have any form of disability when she's older, given that she wasn't able to develop fully inside the uterus before being born. And now it's time for a brain teaser. The question for today is, why is the sky blue? The answer to that later in the show. Today's pin of the week goes to Emma Jane Mitchell from Armidale in Victoria, Australia. Thanks for adding to the Frapper map, Emma Jane. And if you want to get mentioned on the show, just add to the Frapper map, which is linked to from the Brains Matter website. You'd know the story of Cinderella. A lot of us hear the story while we grow up, and there are numerous versions of the story in fairy tales to modern movie versions. The original version of Cinderella is thought to be from China from the 9th century. In the original Chinese story, Go Ye Shen, the shoes aren't glass slippers, but slippers made from gold thread with solid gold soles. The story became popular in the West thanks to the French writer Charles Perrault, who wrote the current version of the Cinderella story in the 17th century. His version of the story was pretty much as we know it today, except that in his version he had a mistranslation. The version of the story he was updating didn't have glass slippers, but slippers made from squirrel fur. It is said that Perrault misheard the word vair, V-A-I-R, which meant squirrel fur, and used the word vair, V-E-R-R-E, which meant glass, which sounds almost identical. He also changed some of the other elements of the story that he borrowed. Effectively, he changed it from an M-rated story to a G-rated one. The medieval version that he was updating has the ugly sisters cutting off their toes and bunions to try on the slippers, and at the end, after the prince and Cinderella marry, the king forces the stepsisters and stepmother to dance themselves to death wearing red-hot iron boots. Definitely not something to read the kids just before bed. Now it's time for the answer to the brain teaser. Do you know why the sky is blue? Well, despite the fact that at night time, when you look out at the sky, it appears black and without any colour at all, during the day it's a rich blue colour. In fact, everyone calls it sky blue. This is due to something called Rayleigh scattering. You probably all know by now that light is made up of different colours, the colours of the rainbow. We used to learn the acronym ROIGABIV at school. This stood for red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet. Colours are actually caused by different wavelengths of light, and sunlight has all the different colours of light. When it enters the atmosphere, it's scattered by particles that have a diameter of around 1/10 the wavelength of sunlight on average. As a result, the blue light is scattered much more than the other colours, so your eyes end up seeing the blue, but not the other colours. Different particles in the air can, of course, change this, hence reddish skies when the air is polluted, for example, a volcanic eruption. But in general, in clear skies, it's the blue that you can see. Thanks to Dino from out near Ballarat in Victoria. Dino commented on episode 14, where I talked about Comet McNaught. He writes, "Hi, just found your show and I listened to the show about Comet McNaught. Here are a couple of pictures I took of it from near Ballarat. Keep up the great show." Thanks for the comment, Dino, and those were great pictures. For those who want to have a look at the pictures, I put them down in the show notes, so have a look at his pictures on the website. Tim Lewis from Peru wrote, "Hey, I like your podcast. I'm living in Peru. I'm a US citizen helping out in my own projects in the Children's Hospital here for the past 14 years. I enjoy the sciences and love listening to anything that relates to improving through the latest in thinking, and even if it's just information for historical knowledge. Thanks and keep it up." Well, thanks to you as well, Tim, and keep up your great work in the Children's Hospital. The world needs more people such as yourself. And hello to DP, NH, Chris and Drylight and anyone else that I've forgotten for your great feedback on the interview with Dr. Baker in the last episode. I'm glad you enjoyed the interview. Thank you also to Lynn and Richard for your supportive emails as well. And that brings us to the end of another episode of Brains Matter for the 27th of February 2007. I love hearing from you all, so you can email me at mail@brainsmatter.com, or you can leave a comment on this episode's show notes at www.brainsmatter.com. Let me know where you're from and how you found the podcast, and donate or help out if you like. Music on today's show is from the Australian electro band Neuropa, and comes courtesy of Alberto Martinez from Riveting Promotions and Neuropa's label. You can check out Neuropa at www.neuropa.biz. That's www.neuropa.biz. And the names of the songs played on today's episode can be found on the Brains Matter website. Don't forget to vote for the podcast in Podcast Alley, and there's a transcript of the show on the website. I'll leave you with a quote from Albert Hubbard. "One machine can do the work of 50 ordinary men. No machine can do the work of one extraordinary man." I hope you enjoyed the show. Bye for now.
I'm not as think as I smart, I am. I'm not as think as I smart, I am. I'm not as think as I thought I might be, for that's clear anybody to see.